There's your favorite brother, your favorite cousin, your favorite uncle, your favorite father, your best friend's best friend. It's me, Dr. Larry, and welcome to the Living For You YouTube channel. I am Dr. Larry Smith, as I've said before. I am a certified life and a certified spiritual coach, and I come here every week with my family, those of you I love, and we talk about many different topics and many different subjects, matters, and all kinds of different things, and we have a good meeting. So if you want to know more about me, I'm not going to go into the whole spiel, but just so you know, my specialization is in African American males. This is my niche, African American males between the ages of 18 and 40 who have dealt with a trauma. And really I can help anybody who have dealt with a trauma to move beyond that trauma, to live a more present life to where that trauma isn't giving them stuff today. And so, that's what I do. But if you want to learn a little bit more about me, know a little bit more about my certifications, my lengthy education, and all of this other stuff, you can go to www.liveforyoucoaching.com. That is www.liveforyoucoaching.com. You can also like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Go ahead and hit that little notification bell up there in the corner so that you know when I drop a new disc record. And that's why when I drop a new something, so that you're up to date with everything that's being popped out here. And you can also follow me on my social media platforms at Dr. Larry Smith on both Instagram and on Facebook. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Dr. Larry Smith, PhD. And keep up with me, communicate with me, email me, Dr. Larry at liveforyoucoaching.com if you want to set up an coaching session. I'll be more than happy. And actually, if you go out to www.liveforyoucoaching.com, at the top there is a banner that lets you know I'm offering a free 30-minute session so that you can get a sample of the goodness that I got to help you get through your trauma. And it's a very good sample. It's a very good one that'll help you at least begin to get the breakthrough that you need from dealing with this trauma. And anybody click on that so you get a free 30-minute session with yours truly. You can go ahead and set up that, and we can make that arrangement so that you're able to begin your journey. Or you can just go straight forward and jump into the program. So we have a lot out there that you can find useful. Not last week, but a couple of weeks ago, I decided that because I really appreciate Iyanla Fix My Life, this is her 10th season, her last season of doing the show, I decided that I wanted to do a review of the show's episodes. And I didn't do last week because I held it, because I knew it was going to coincide with what this week was about, and as well as what I was going to talk about in my life coaching video. And you can go back and you can actually, I'll attach that to the end of this video so that you can go and look and see that video. Because it all aligned, the universe worked in my favor because it all aligned to the conversation about family and the sins of parents and how things trickle on down to the children. So I was so fortunate, and there is actually, like I said, I'm a week late, so the last episode was an episode with the comedian Lunel, well-known comedian Lunel, and it's the same storyline, you know, as far as the same thing of things that trickle down from the parents, the sins of the parents that trickle down onto the kids. And so more than likely I'll give a video of that by the end of this week because it falls right in line. So like I said, everything lined up. It's a great thing. It was intentionally done. That's why I didn't do the episode last week, but I wanted to do that now. And of course, you guys know I have my notes because I want to make sure I get to the points that I want to make as it relates. And remember, these are my takes. This is my review of this episode from a life coach's perspective. Iyanla Vanzant is a life coach. That is what she does. She's like me, a certified life and spiritual coach, amongst other things. And so there's a different way of how we view these episodes than an average person who is just watching the episodes from a more I don't want to say lay because that sounds like, you know, but from a perspective of a non-life coach perspective. And in addition, you know, a lot of people assume she's doing therapy. We as life coaches, we're not therapists. We're life coaches. Therapists work from behind, and they really try to dive into stuff from behind. But the goal of a life coach is to get you present and to help you move forward and to deal with how to create a plan for moving forward from today, right? So it's a very interesting thing. So season 2, episode 2 was called House of Chaos. And it was Miss Christie who was at the head of this one. She is the matriarch, the mother. She is a 47-year-old woman. She has 8 children. So 47, 8 children. You already see there's a lot already building up there. And who came with her were her, I want to say her husband, who's a young man himself. He's 31 years old. Her oldest son, who is 27 years old, and then her youngest 2 children. Her youngest daughter, and of course her youngest child, who is a 17-year-old boy. And the 2 younger children live with her. The daughter, she's 21 years old. She has a child already, and she's pregnant with one on the way, and she's just 21 years old. And the 17-year-old is always getting into trouble. And I want to emphasize some of that a little bit, because I also give in a lot of my personal perspective, and I realize, coming from my background and from my trauma and from my stuff and from my lineage and my history, that I was the oldest, right? And so I saw things, experienced things, went through things that the youngest of my family, who is 6+ years younger than me, 7, 8 years younger than me, didn't go through and didn't see. But there are things that he went through and that he saw that I didn't see, because by the time he was coming of age, 12, 13, 14 years old, I was out the house in college doing my thing on, in another place. And so there was a disconnect there in our experiences of what we went through. And a lot of times, by the time my mom got to him, she was in her own thing, trying to live her life, trying to figure it out for herself, that many times he fell through the cracks. And I actually see the exact same thing with this family here on Iyanla, where the same thing kind of happened. And so the mom said she was having issues micromanaging the children, the 2 that were there, the 21-year-old and the 17-year-old. And of course, the 21-year-old, like I said, has children. And her husband felt as though it was time for the children to move out of the house so that the couple can do what they need to do to become closer as a couple and to progress as a couple. The husband wants the children to move out. And you can understand that. Now, the youngest, he's 17. It's still a little too early for him to move out. But the 21-year-old, they want her to move out, go into her own life so that they can begin to have their own lives. And so that's that's how it starts. That's where it is. And they're using all these things, like their situations, and it's these people and these stuff, and they're not really laser targeting in on what the actual issue is. So on the surface level, and how they're surfacely presenting this situation, is though that there is a situation about grown kids who don't want to get out of the house. When in reality, there is a deeper situation beneath the surface from the kids' experience of what their mother had done, and had done to them, and had done in her own life that was still affecting them. So the kid, the oldest son, specifically said he didn't want his sister's children and his sister herself to turn out like their mom. And that's when we find out what's going on. We find out the youngest is living a reckless life because, like I said, sometimes that youngest child falls through the crack, many times actually. That youngest child falls through the cracks, and he feels like he can do whatever, and he can be whatever, and he can get involved in all kinds of trouble. And really what he's doing is he's lashing out for his mother's attention. We find that out. The oldest wants to get over the hurt and the damage. And that's when we find out. Because he actually says, he said, I actually want to get through some of the hurt and the damage that we have been through. No one said it in the whole conversation at the beginning that they were hurt and damaged. And Iyanla called them out and was like, whoa, I've been sitting here with you guys, you've been discussing yada yada and all these things, and no one mentions it. And that is something that you see happening in a lot of families. And instead of dealing with root issues, they nip at the leaves, they nip at the branches, they nip at the extensions of the root issues instead of actually dealing with root issues, because nobody, and I do emphasize, nobody really likes to get their hands dirty in the dirt, go with my analogy, dirty in the dirt to uproot the actual issues of the problem. What the actual issue of this problem was, when the oldest was 12 years old, his mother, she left him. She moved to another state. She went for another state for a job. They didn't really go into direct and clear terms as to why she left, and neither did she. So obviously there must be something, perhaps, assuming that she didn't fully tell the whole story, and we didn't ever get that. and it just never was addressed to her kids. They were just expected to just move on. No clear answers at all, which is, like I said, a common thing you see in people in general, but definitely a common thing with this family is that there are no real clear answers to many of the situations that we're seeing before us. And so Iyanla asked all kinds of questions, and she's one of the deepest questions she asks, I think, is when we find out all the situations, the mothers show up to deal with an issue of how to get her grown kids to be self-sufficient so that they can get on out the house. But Iyanla said, no. You got all of this stuff going on with your kids, feeling abandoned, feeling neglected, feeling ignored, watching you go through stuff. Why aren't you here dealing with that? Why aren't you dealing with that issue? Because Iyanla knows, like many life coaches and therapists and people who are just perceptive know, that there's root issues here. You're trying to cut off some branches and some leaves, and you ain't dealing with the root issue, right? So she's like, why aren't you dealing with that? And so she breaks out her deck of cards, where she gives these different emotions and feelings and thoughts to them, like dishonesty that goes to the mom, and sad that goes to the daughter who's apparently sad, and overloaded, and the husband who's overloaded and disconnected and abandoned, which they felt all of them get, and all kinds of things. And what wind up happening is Iyanla explains to them that when you allow these things to fester, they grow into bigger issues and they become huge. And the problem is, and the mom wasn't really feeling and accepting this early on, Iyanla grabbed all the cards from everybody else and took all the cards and sat them on the mom. Because a lot of times when kids grow up in a dysfunctional and broken and shattered and torn and irresponsible home, it's created by the ones who raised them, the parents. The mom and the dad. Now, in this instance, there was the talk about the dad was definitely a little back talk. Obviously, they're separate daddies, but it's a little bit of a side conversation that they're having. We'll touch on it. But she placed all the cards in the mom's lap. And Iyanla said, we need to talk. Woman to woman, mom to mom, and Iyanla as an elder to this younger mom. And she did. And Iyanla gives her experience of being 21 years old with multiple kids, 3 kids, and a young mom not knowing. And the mother was not understanding that the decisions that she makes and the choices that she decided to make and the things that she's deciding not to deal with aren't just impacting her. It's impacting her, her kids, and their kids, which came out to like 24 people. So there's beginning to be built from this mother's root, this ancestral root, a legacy of hurt, a legacy of abandonment, a legacy of trauma that isn't being dealt with. And Iyanla kind of scooped that up and like kind of put that in her face in a really deep way. Now, the husband, this is about the time we find out that he's 31 years old. Now, mind you, her oldest son is 27. So she literally married somebody who's roughly about 4 years older than her oldest child, which in many ways kind of taking on a new child. Now, this didn't really get emphasized as much in this episode, but the first thing that came to my mind is she got 8 children. Now she's taking on another child. And I wondered, why is it that she would take on somebody so young? I've seen it happen in my family. My mom's last husband was about 14, 15 years younger than her. And so I knew why, but I wanted to see if this why was the same why this mother did this in her life. And it turns out it was. We'll get there. So the children felt disconnected. The daughter watched and observed her mom going through bad relationships, and so she decided she became like her mom. Her mom had failed relationships after failed relationships. And in her one-on-one session with Iyanla, that came out that those failed relationships impacted how she sees relationships and how she has relationships. And Iyanla asks her, what did your mom teach you? And the girl says, this is what she taught me, right? She taught me this. She taught me how to be this. And then Iyanla asks, well, what is your dream? What are your dreams? What do you want to do? And her dreams were, I want to make sure my kids are okay. I want to take care of my kids. And Iyanla told her something that I thought was so powerful. Because many times as parents, especially inexperienced parents, parents become overconsumed in their children, especially when they're young, when the parents are young and they have children young, that all of their dreams and all of their goals and all of their hopes and all of their accomplishments get put to the side. My mom did that. My dad, I think, did that to his own level. Put all their dreams and hopes and goals aside and everything into their kids' lives or into their moment that they're in now. But what benefit are you giving your kids when you're not showing them to be the best you that you can be? You really ought to go watch that last video that I did about the sins of the parents, because you get that sense that you got to show up as the best parent. But if you're putting it all into your kids and you're denying yourself your dreams, as Iyanla said, focus on being there for you. Don't give up your life for your children, because children are portable. They'll go where you go. They'll go how you go. She talked about how her kids were there when she was in law school. They were sleeping at the school. After she would give them their snacks and then whatever, she was working on her law degree, being better for the kids. We find out in a few scenes after the commercial break, of course, that the mom is dealing with something that she hasn't told her kids. And that usually is the case. That we see our parents and we experience trauma sometimes from our parents, but we don't realize that our parents have experienced trauma and they're just giving us what they can. That is a big eye-opener for me when I learned these things about my mom and my family. That was a big eye-opener, and actually it was a very good tool for me to be able to forgive and move on when I realized that you cannot expect somebody to give you a whole cup of water when they're only working with a quarter of a cup, or when they're only working with half of a cup. You can't expect the full cup when the cup ain't full. You know, and so that helped me to work on forgiveness. And so Iyanla asked her the same question, you know, to the mom about what is this experience that you have, right? And the mom was actually being physically abused from 12 years old, touched by strangers. Mom wasn't really there to protect her. And the mom couldn't say it. She couldn't express it and articulate it really clearly. But Iyanla, being a good life coach, she observed the signs and the way the mom was stammering and stuttering and crying and shaking, and that there was a deep trauma behind the sexual violations that the mom got as a little girl. And she noticed that. And so she said she want her to express those things. You can't deny those things. You can't run from those things. You can't hide those things. You got to confront those things directly, because it is those things that she refused to touch and she refused to deal with that led to the abandonment of her kids. Generational, the sins of the parents and the parents' parents that are being passed down. Pathology. Iyanla didn't want her to tell the kids now. But what she learned from her mom is that she should be loyal to people even if they abuse her. And that showed up in her relationship life. And is obviously showing up in her daughter's relationship life and so forth. She told her something I also thought that was profound as well. She said, "You can only give what you could. Don't beat yourself up now for what you've done in the past." In other words, like Byron Katie says, let it go, because it doesn't serve you now, because there's nothing you can do. And back then there was nothing you can do. So why hold on to it? Why beat yourself up over what you could not do now? And so we find out throughout the episode that there is also another dynamic to this relationship between the husband and the wife. The wife, Christy, is very disrespectful to her husband, Dimitri. And he expected to come into a situation that he knew was chaotic and be some sort of solace and peace and helping to fix the situation, but he's a 31-year-old man who doesn't really have a voice, who doesn't put his foot down, who doesn't know how to speak to him, who allows his wife to disrespect him, and he just kind of plays into that. He's a softer person than she is, and he's a softer person than she's used to dealing with, and it does come out that that she's allowed being abused and by alpha men and being taken advantage of all her life since she was 12. She got her somebody really, they didn't say it this way, but she got somebody really that she could take advantage of. Now she doesn't have to be beat down because this man's not strong. And Iyanla was trying to show him that you got to take care of yourself. You got to be able to stand up and hold your and hold your ground. She asked me a very profound question. Iyanla was just throwing these questions out here, by the way, that just caused me to reverberate in my own mind like, wow. She said, how long are you going to dishonor and disrespect yourself by being here? That's a question we all ask sometimes, right? We in a relationship that's toxic. We in an environment situation, and it doesn't have to be actually an intimate relationship. It could be family. It could be friends, work environment, whatever. How long are we going to dishonor and disrespect ourselves by staying in that environment? And so she separates them. She gives the man some homework. She gives the wife some homework. They go off in separate ways overnight, and they gather their thoughts so that they can come with as much of the stuff that they need to talk about the next morning by themselves. And so when they come back, first the wife comes back, Miss Winborn, and she said she felt alone while she's by herself. And Iyanla said, by yourself or with yourself, right? You know, you're given an opportunity now to dive in somewhere that you probably never did because you never had the time alone, or you never took. Because we all have the time to take. We just don't always take it to be by ourselves. And she explained that she felt congested. And she felt from the child to the mom to the wife, she felt congested and everything was heavy. And Iyanla says, so very often we become mothers before we grow the woman up inside of us. And so the child is the one playing an adult. And children aren't prepared for any of those responsibilities that adults have. And it just, like I said, it just keeps continually going deeper and deeper and deeper. And like I said, Iyanla is just diving into all kinds of things. The oldest son had witnessed the mom be abused, and he even tried to stop a fight that she was in with the youngest child's father. And he felt abandoned by his mom, someone he tried to save, and he didn't like the way that made him feel. He was so hurt that he couldn't even muster up tears anymore because the years of tears had worn his eye ducts dry. And the mom felt it, so she was crying and she apologized in what seemed to be a heartfelt way, and asked for the forgiveness. And Iyanla told him once again something profound. She said, you are never going to know that you can trust your mom unless you allow yourself to be vulnerable and lay in her bosom, lay and hug her, and just break down. Then you would know you can trust her again, because the woman that you were supposed to trust betrayed your trust by leaving you at an early age. And we find out, as time goes on, we find out there's more. The youngest kids have witnessed their mom selling drugs with their dad. And she didn't realize that they had witnessed this, so she was telling another story than what he had experienced, and she couldn't understand that difference, but he saw it and he observed it, even though she probably thought he was too young to observe it. And so there's a lot of things that, like I said, there's so many layers that this family was not telling, not talking about, not acknowledging that they needed to talk about, traumas that they need to talk about. Nevertheless, Iyanla allowed all of them to air this stuff out, to tell each person tell the other people their grievance with them, which I thought was a good thing because they're airing it out. And then the youngest, 17 years old, you know, he goes to tell the husband, you need to do X, Y, Z. And Iyanla stops him. She shuts him down and says, you're not a man. You don't have a right to tell a man what to do with his wife. He's like, but it's my mom. No. And I read that resonated so deeply with me because I remember when I was a kid and when my mom remarried my stepdad, and I just was not trying to hear him tell me or tell her, and I was trying to regulate. That was something, I was young. I was like 14, 15 years old when that happened. And so I just couldn't understand that it wasn't my place. But now as an adult, I'm like, wait a minute, I can't come into a man's marriage and dictate what goes on in it as a kid. That's not my place. It's in a child's place. And so when Iyanla shut it down, that was kind of an interesting reminder of where I was in my own child being. And so they aired out all their grievances, and of course the stuff that they had, the adjectives and things that were given to them earlier, they put in the fire, and kind of let them go and move on. But she realized, Iyanla realized, and I realized, and I'm sure all the viewers, all of you guys realized, that this family had a lot of things to work through. This wasn't the end of their journey. And if she was going into another season, I would like to see a part 2 of how their journey is continuing, because this family has a lot of stuff to unpack and to dive into. And the one thing that they have to do that's very important is they have to get around trying to cover up, hide, disguise, and not address the things that they see that are ugly. Sometimes in order to find healing, you got to address the things that are ugly, that are painful, that are just horrendous for you to look at. Those are the things that you need to work with the most, because those are the things that are impacting your present reality the most, the things you don't want to see. And so it was so much, and I see that this family have so much to build upon as they're going to continue their journey and going and growing and becoming better in their reality and in their present and dealing with all their traumas. So that's the episode. It was so much. You see how long this video is? It was so much to unpack. I didn't even get a chance to get to all my notes because it was so many gems and jewels. So if you get a chance to go watch episode 2, season 10 of Iyanla Fix My Life, I promise you it's going to be so much. And like I said, for myself, I saw a lot of my experience in it, so it was just so many things that was said and done and spoken was resonating with me, so I felt it. So I want you to go out and experience that and see that. We'll come back here as we always do. Like I said, perhaps towards the end of the week, I'll do the episode on Lunel so I can catch myself up in where I need to be with my reviews. But hopefully this blessed you. Hopefully you get something from it. Remember that if you need a life coach, you need somebody to talk your stuff through to deal with trauma, you can go to www.liveforyoucoaching.com. You can also reach out to me at Dr. Larry at Live For You Coaching, and we can work through whatever we need to work through. As I always say, I love you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.